Okay, should I get started? Yeah. Okay, great. Well, thank you for joining us. Probably people will still be coming in, so we can just start. So we're here to talk about the STEM Advocacy Institute. So I'm going to share just the introduction, and then we'll have more information. So our workshop today is expanding pathways into the science policy workforce for undergraduate students in STEM. My name is Adriana Bankston. I'm a researcher investigator with the STEM Advocacy Institute, and Erin is part of the Bankston Lab that we'll talk about, and this is part of our goal with SAI. So I'm gonna let's see, I think I have to switch. We'll have Fenua Mundi, who is the chief resident and founder of SAI, tell you a little bit about the organization, and then we'll get started with the workshop. So I'm going to share again the video. Let me know if it works.
Chief resident here at SAI. I'm so sorry I couldn't be there with you today.
Sorry, let me start again.
Hello, hi, my name is Fenua Mundi, and I'm the chief resident here at SAI. I'm so sorry I couldn't be there with you today for your workshop, but I hope that you guys have a great meeting. I want to take a few minutes to tell you about SAI, what it is, and hope maybe you will consider applying to some of our programs. Or just getting in touch. I really love chatting with young people who are really curious and want to learn more about getting involved at the interface of science and society. So what is SAI? SAI is an incubator / think tank, if you will. What we try to do is make it easier for scholars, practitioners, and founders to develop and launch the next generation of programs at an interface of science and society. So what does that mean? We're looking for people that are building programs and tools that tackle issues of diversity, issues of access, issues of policy. All these are components of the equation looking at science and society. And so SAI is this sandbox, if you will, whereby you can come in and pursue your own questions. And this is a critical component, your own questions to ask and hopefully find answers to those questions. But let me tell you, it's really hard to do this. Whether it's about what research do you need, collaboration, who should you work with, where am I going to get the money, how am I going to evaluate what I'm doing, do I have enough time, who is competing with me, you name it, it is so much, and all of it comes at you in one go. Okay, and these challenges, these founders, these practitioners are around the world. Okay, and there are different stages in their careers. So what we try and do is to make it easy. We provide infrastructure. We are a nonprofit by framework. We provide training, so we bring in people, and we're always looking for new people with new expertise, whether it's in evaluation and other component policy, like Dr. Bankston, who looks at the equation of science and society with policy in mind. Mentorship, big piece of SAI is mentorship, and of course funding, which is a huge component that we have heard over time that both fellows and residents want to have more funding. So SAI is broken up into three initiatives, which I want to discuss further with you today. We have the summer internship, and then we have the 10-week fellows program, 2 cohorts, one in the fall and one in the spring, and also our long-term residency. Those are 12 months to 24-month long periods of time, renewal, of course. And I will add here, our application deadline for the internship and fellowship programs are open. So consider, if you're an undergraduate, apply for the internship program. And if you're graduate students and postdoc, consider looking at the fellows program. But of course, if you're an undergraduate and have a fantastic idea that you want to develop as a fellow, consider it. So let me tell you more about these programs, because they can be, certainly there's a distinction between them that is really important. So the internship, as I mentioned, 10 weeks summer, focusing on undergraduates. And the idea here is looking at research. So they come in and ask very fundamental questions. The goal is not to do the work itself, but to go through the motions of developing the proposal from the ground up, asking the questions, redefining the questions, and saying, is there a better question? And how would I address this question if I was to actually do it? So what you end up producing is an NSF style proposal that then is externally reviewed and you get feedback on. Fellows is quite different. This is 10 weeks. You get funding, essentially like seed money, to launch a program that tackles a specific problem at the interface of science and society. So we've had people who have looked at questions of art and science, who have looked at, I want to build a like a science festival in my community. So ultimately what we look for are really fundamental ideas that tackle a very specific problem. In the residency, what you do is to take those ideas as a fellow and really just run with them. We give you the infrastructure and then continued funding to say, okay, how can I make this sustainable, impactful, and successful in the long term? And so this pipeline of our work here provides us a way to work with individuals at various stages. And so if you're an undergraduate, again, think about the internship. If you have an idea, even if you're an undergraduate, for a program level activity that you want to do, a project, then consider the fellowship program and get some seed money for your idea. A lot of people in the fellows program launch, whether it's a nonprofit or they launch a new tool, a new business. We've had quite a few business ideas that have come through. So again, those tend to be more heavy, intensive, if you will. And in the residency, you take the idea and continue on for the duration of 12 to 24 month period of time. So SAI, if you look at the distribution of what we've been up to, we are publishing, and we've been very thankful and grateful that we're able to publish our work across various journals. So you can visit our website to take a look at that work. Down here, 17. We've had currently, so far, we have 17 active residents. So you can go to our website, see what they're working on, sort their projects. Really, really cool. Check it out. On average, in a given year, 8 to 10 fellows. So about 20-30% acceptance rate. And this is always hard because limited funding. But again, I urge you to apply to find out. And the same thing here for the summer interns, about 3 to 4 a year, and roughly the same acceptance rate. We're just so excited to have such a big interest of people want to take place and participate in these programs. If you haven't checked out our library, we have the SAI library. So go to our website and type in SAI library. You'll see in the action checklist there over 1,000 individual items. So we are always putting new articles that can help. Hopefully, we can help individuals in their own work and their own projects. And our fellows, and this is a number that we continue to improve. We're seeing the projects that are indeed continue to live on after they're trained, so around the 60% success rate and survival rate, which I think is really, really important. We roughly have 3 to 4 active grants on any given time, and we're always continuing to see how we can expand this over the upcoming years. And this interesting number here, you see 2.38 over 3. So this is the impact factor, if you will. We asked the residents how impactful they feel SAI is. And again, this is a work in progress as we continue to add up and beef up the support that we do provide our residents. And so this is a number that we track very closely, and each year we're asking our residents and even fellows, what can we do better? How can we improve? And we are of the mindset that growth, we can do better, be better for our residents, for our fellows, and for our interns. And of course, if you're looking for something much more constrained, we do once in a while have nano courses in either the fall, spring, and summer terms. So just check it out. Sometimes it might be some really cool nano courses you might want to take. And these are very, very short, 1 to 2 weeks long, maybe 2 to 3 sessions actually at most. Very focused to one element of an aspect. So lot of projects. I encourage you to go to the website to check it out. Dr. Bankston here has her own lab as well. Check that out, and she's hosting this today. But of course, we have a lot of other projects that people are working on. My own lab, the M Lab, check us out. We run various projects that we're running and have launched. The Stories in Science, the Journal of Stories in Science is one, for example. But this list continues to grow with each new cohort of fellows. So I encourage you to check out the website. Our community really, again, provides a lot of opportunities to connect, learn, and collaborate. And these are really critical elements that we believe for success. Collaborations are the core of what SAI does. And we're completely virtual. So a big part of it is spent sharing ideas, sharing failures, sharing what we're struggling with. And I think that's really critical if we are to make a dent, and that realize that we're all in this together as we try to tackle diverse issues at the interface of science and society. And the nature of that equation is actually really amazing because it's always changing. And so we don't know what new fellows will work on. And so we are always excited to be challenged by new residents, new fellows, and new interns who come up with some fantastic ideas that we have not thought about. And our goal is to help them bring them to life. We couldn't have done this without the support of many supporters. And this is a continuing effort of ours to find more support for all our members. So again, visit our website to learn about these wonderful folks that are seeing the potential in the work that we're doing and making it possible. So get in touch, okay? Get in touch. This is my email. All of us are here. And today, Dr. Benson is also one as well. Reach out to her, to all of us. And I look forward to hearing from you. And please, again, don't hesitate. A lot of people hesitate to email, but I welcome emails, and especially if you have questions about the summer program or the fellows program, do get in touch. The deadline is December 31st. The earlier you get in touch, the better, because then I can address those questions that you may have as early as possible. Okay, so with that, enjoy your meeting, and I look forward to hearing from you. Bye.
All right, so that was the intro. I'm gonna just share the website again, and then we'll move on to a little bit of networking.
All right, so as Adriana mentioned, for those of you that joined us during the meeting, our workshop today is expanding pathways into science policy workforce. This is, we're going to be focusing on different opportunities to get into science policy, but also specifically for undergraduate students. And yeah, I'm Erin. Adriana just mentioned her name, so we'll move on. So we're going to do a little breakout session here, and just doing introductions. We really wanted to provide an opportunity for you all to network, as a lot of opportunities in science policy arise through networking. So we want to be able to provide that for you. So we're going to put you guys into breakout rooms where we hope you'll share your name, affiliation, or organization you are working with, how you got involved in science policy, your favorite thing in science policy, so any of your interests, and then also what your favorite part of the symposium is so far. So Adriana, if you want to put us all into breakout rooms, we can get that started.
Okay, so for some reason, it's not working right now. I'm not seeing that, but since we have a small group, we might just want to do it here, if that's okay with everybody.
Yeah, that's totally fine. I can start out then. So I'll just keep sharing my screen so you all can see what we are sharing. So my name's Erin Sabolt. I currently work at AAAS, the Center for Scientific Evidence in Public Issues, but I also help Adriana a lot with the STEM Advocacy Institute with the Bankston Lab. So specifically, like Adriana mentioned, we're trying to look at the science policy workforce and trying to look at ways to diversify the science policy workforce and make it more accessible for people. how I got involved in science policy, really, it was just like a lot of research on my end. I was always interested in in politics and also science, like even from high school. And so I ended up majoring in biology at my undergraduate institution, but still really wanted to take a lot of those like government and politics classes. And luckily I was able to find, different things online about science policy. So that's kind of how I got into it. And then I ended up getting a internship at AAAS, which really solidified my desire to go into science policy as a career. My specific interest in science policy, I feel like I don't really have like one thing I'm really passionate about. I really enjoy environmental policy, specifically like I did a lot of work on invasive species policy and kind of agriculture side of things during my master's. So that's definitely something I'm interested in, and kind of environmental sustainability. My favorite part of the symposium so far, well, I feel like I'm a little biased, but I'm really excited for this workshop right now. So I'm looking forward to hearing what you all have to say as well. And I will pass it over to Adriana.
Yeah, hi everybody. So I'm Adriana Bankston. So my day job, I'm a legislative analyst at the University of California. We advocate for research and workforce issues in Capitol Hill in relation to universities. So my involvement in policy actually comes from having been in academia, and really I've always been interested in sort of systemic change in academia, higher education policy, and how we can think about improving the system for trainees from a policy standpoint at the federal level, as I'm working now. I got involved through a fellowship with Society for Neuroscience in 2019, and I've been in this role ever since about summer of 2019. As I said, my science policy interests are really around STEM, sort of STEM workforce, education, higher education policy, and the Bankston Lab fits into that, and we'll talk about that later. Favorite part, so I've actually only attended the open house right before this, sort of the networking session, so that was helpful. So I'd be happy to hear from other folks if you've attended other sessions today, how those were. So I'm going to pass it on to Nikita.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, hi everyone, I'm Nikita. I'm a PhD student of Environmental Science and Policy at George Mason University. I've also started the Science Policy Group. It's an NSPN chapter at GMU. How did I get involved in science policy? So I have some experience around regulatory compliance. When I didn't know it was called science, it is actually science policy. So I was doing that back in India, and then I'm doing this PhD program, and then I was introduced to NSPN, and I realized, oh, what I'm already into science policy, and that's what I'm interested in. So then I took up a Virginia State Policy Fellowship. That's when I got more hands-on experience, and my interests are in environmental science policy, because like in higher education policy, because my dissertation is around promoting sustainability in higher education, and I'm trying to develop an assessment tool for understanding students' sustainability literacy and culture on campus. My favorite part of the symposium was the networking, which was there before this. So, yeah, thank you. And I pass it over to Haley. Sorry if I pronounced it incorrectly.
You're good. It's pronounced Haley. My name is Haley Grubbs. I'm a senior in civil engineering at Virginia Tech. I currently work in water quality, and I am involved with the Science Policy Education and Advocacy Club on campus. We call ourselves SPEAK. And I got involved in science policy because of my mentor that I work with in lab. She started the club and got me interested in it. My science policy interests are water quality and also environmental science, like a lot of you. And then my favorite part of the symposium so far has been realizing that there are a lot of people who are also feeling the same, like, shaky way the climate's changing and how we need to do something about it, and everyone's coming together with like different ideas and different views and different experiences, and it's been really interesting to hear all of that. And then I will pass it to Warima. I probably pronounced it very wrong, but I'm passing it to you.
Hello, I'm Warima. Nice to meet everybody. I am from Rutgers University. I defended my dissertation last July, actually. Sorry about my kids in the background. So I did my dissertation in science education, and one thing that is really important about the research in science education is how policy relates to the development and implementation of curricula and the development of like how that curricula is going to actually be used in practice. So like it is really no point of doing research in science education if you are really not going to have a policy impact with your work. And my advisor did a lot of the work being involved in the NGSS, the Next Generation Science Standards that are being used in some of the eastern states. And I was kind of like, I was able to observe that, and that's how I became interested in policy. And I've taken courses. I also was in the science policy certificate that Adriana and Haringer do with UC Irvine, and that was really helpful. And the favorite part, actually, I haven't been able to see anything else. So I was willing, I'm gonna be looking at other things today, but I didn't have time yesterday since I also recently started a new job. So I'm like in transition. Yeah, thank you. Oh, sorry, and I will call on Asamani. Did I pronounce it correctly?
Yeah, it's Adrian. That's my last name. Zoom just puts my initial and my last name together. Hi, I'm Adrian. I'm actually a fourth-year PhD student at the University of Alabama in Birmingham. I study musculoskeletal diseases in children. So I got involved in science policy because I've kind of like Erin, I've always been involved in like politics even from high school and like love science. And then like what really got me like passionate about science is that I'm actually from Miami, Florida. So I moved from Miami to Minnesota and then back down to Alabama. So I was kind of like moving from places where politics got very polarized in dramatic ways, not just in weather, from like super hot to super cold. But just like seeing how science and the truth around science and the story around science got distorted as things got more polarized. And so I would get more passionate about science communication and you know, really being the voice for science in politics, not just letting, you know, people with MBAs or with different agendas that were not about science and not about truth in science. So that got me very passionate about being in science policy as far as interests. And so far as for a specific policy interest, I think I'm very passionate about healthcare policy and healthcare advocacy. And the favorite part of my symposium so far has really just been seeing so many people who are scientists, who want to be part of policy, who want to be part of science communication. I'm the president of the first and only like science policy advocacy group in Alabama. And, you know, it's hard to like generate interest and generate enthusiasm about, you can take what you know from the bench to, you know, to the community, to policy. And so seeing so many people get involved makes me very enthusiastic. So I'm super glad about that. It's just seeing everyone like jumping in and communicating is like so exciting.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you all for sharing. I think we're going to have really good conversations about the SciPol workforce in this presentation. So I'm going to pass it back over to Adriana, who's going to give a little bit more background about our lab and our goals for today.
Great, thank you. Thank you all for being here. So we just need to give this disclaimer that none of us are representing our employers. So this is our personal views here today. Okay. So we may not need this, but we did want to start with just a basic description about science policy and how to get involved to frame a little bit of what we're doing with SAI. So we define science policy as the allocation of resources for the conduct of science towards serving public interest, which is very broad, as we've seen here, a lot of different areas. refers to funding of science, careers of scientists, as well as translating scientific discoveries into technological innovation. And some of this can be related to economic development, competitiveness. So a lot of things about competitiveness of the United States on different policy areas around the world as well. So a lot of ways to look at this. So I think, again, we don't need to convince you to engage in policy. You're already here, but some things, and I'm happy to talk about this from our experiences as well, sort of my day-to-day job as well. But it does provide an exposure to different ways of thinking on specific issues that you're interested in. So it's nice to hear what those topics are, and really gives you an understanding of the world and the issues that you're looking at in a broader sense, and thinking through how to address a set of problems that actually matter beyond just the lab bench. And so it does give you an opportunity to make a difference in an area of interest, bringing your expertise to the table again. Some people work on policies that are related to their research. You may be interested in other things that you want to explore. But evidence-based policy is important, and having the scientific background makes a difference. I think with the pandemic, we've seen more involvement in the community as well. So what it means to be a scientist has been expanded now, sort of thinking more through community engagement. And then again, thinking again through broader impacts in the sense of how can you apply your background to help society. So current pathways into science policy, I think most people know that probably the most common way to do it is to get your STEM PhD, go into SSS fellowship or something like that. Does require PhDs. Internships do exist at different levels, including on the Hill with nonprofits and other groups, as well as obviously having a full-time position in the field. There are different sectors to look at. So nonprofits like SSS, so Erin can talk about that, and Union of Christian Scientists, for example. We encourage you to get involved in extracurricular activities, obviously already here with NSPN, but your local science policy groups, clubs, as well as courses. So we've already talked about the Irvine course, as well as other offerings that you might have at your school. And then also publishing in journals, which Warima can talk about. She published her paper in the Journal of Science Policy and Governance on education recently. So also good opportunity and ways to expand your skill set. So as I said, traditional pathways, thinking through a lot of science policy fellowships require PhDs in STEM to transition to full-time careers. And what we're really trying to do here with the lab, and this is sort of expanding the policy arm of SAI essentially, is to look at other ways to do this. For undergraduates, people who have masters, people who are not in their PhD for whatever reason, they left, they don't want to do a PhD, they're interested in policy and doing it some other way. Or they can't afford a PhD, or so essentially sort of other ways that don't require a science PhD to do this. Undergraduates, this has been, I think it's emerged as a gap to where people who are not, STEM scientists are interested in policy, and sort of, I think there's other ways that we can think about entering the field. And also we really want to focus on students from underrepresented backgrounds and folks who aren't sort of on the, the coasts and the top 20 schools, and people that don't have these opportunities, and how we can help with what we're doing here. So this is largely motivated by the fact that, as I said, most opportunities exist at the PhD level and sort of decrease as you move to masters and undergraduates. And really, we've started doing some research around opportunities for undergraduates, and there's very little out there. So part of our goal is to actually write a paper and figure out what the gaps are and what the needs are in terms of training, and actually develop some trainings with the lab. So, and then kind of bigger picture here is, again, we want to expand opportunities into policy to expand the workforce itself. And so this is an interesting concept, I think, what it means to be in the science policy workforce, and people that are trained for this career path. Again, there's a lot of different ways to do this, and really looking at this sort of systematically, and how do we reach people that are interested but don't have these opportunities. So I think we already talked about the SAI generally, but again, the main goal is to expand pathways between science and society. So as Fanuel talked about, there's a lot of different tools, sort of technical things, databases, fellows do research. So there's a lot of different branches to SAI, which is interesting, so you can check it out. And so it's really a place to build tools and do research on topics of interest. And so as I said, this is our sort of endeavor to build out the policy branch of the organization. So this is the lab. Let's see if I can, I'm gonna share the link. Yeah, so we're really aligned with the mission of SAI in terms of workforce development. So again, they're very focused on underrepresented students, as well as undergraduates, and sort of the three areas that we're looking to cover, again, doing some research on this area to see where the gaps are and look at higher education. Do look at policy and advocacy, so in the sense of trainings and programs for students in this space. And then workforce development, which is what does this mean to actually go on the job market with your degree and kind of that side of things. So education and workforce, again, is both of those, but we're planning to cover a number of areas here over time. And then I'm currently leading the lab as an investigator, and then Erin is a research associate, as well as Nicole. So if you're interested, we can talk about if you'd like to join or help us out with some projects. We're just getting started with some research right now. Okay.
All right, so we had originally had breakout rooms for these, but I think, again, since we have a small group, we can just stay in the main room and kind of talk about these issues. So we really want to get to like the nitty gritty of like the problems with the current pathways to science policy. So I can like explain a little bit about my background. I know I said how I got into science policy, but I have a lot of other thoughts about current pathways, so I can kind of start the discussion, and then I'd love to hear from all of you and like what you guys think about this. So I originally was interested in science policy as an undergraduate, and really struggled to find opportunities that were available to me. I was lucky enough to get a AAAS fellowship, or not fellowship, internship, big difference. I got a AAAS internship, which really helped me kind of figure out that I wanted to do that, but not everyone has that opportunity. And so I ended up going to get my master's in biomedical science policy and advocacy from Georgetown. And even then, I have my master's currently in science policy, and there's still a lot of the opportunities like fellowships are really directed towards PhD level scientists. And I really think, obviously, I think we absolutely need PhD level scientists at the table, decision-making table, for, just as Adriana said, evidence-based policy. We need people with that expertise. But I really think that this leaves out a lot of people that could potentially contribute to policymaking. So not everyone pursues a PhD for different reasons. Not everyone finishes their PhD. And so trying to think about like the current problems we have with the pathway and why it's like that. And yeah, just kind of brainstorming. I know that's like a personal experience from me and how I view the identify certain problems, but I'd love to hear your experiences and what problems you've seen trying to enter the workforce, or even just like volunteering and trying to get more involved in science policy.
Can I go? So I think one of the problems are, I think there's a lot of different roadblocks. Like for me, I think in terms of when you're trying to consider different career opportunities, I don't know like how many, we have so many undergrads in the lab, and they all start out as like, maybe freshmen in biology, and they're like, I'm going to go to medical school. And that's because a lot of the time, the number one thing that they hear about is the best way you can help people with science is to go to medical school, to go be a doctor, to, you know, be in the healthcare force. That is one way to help people, but you know, you might actually have talents and pursuits and, you know, that you want to do in policy versus going into healthcare, because that's only one branch of like approaching healthcare and approaching how to provide for people. That was my issue, where I was just like, I'm not sure I want to be a doctor, but I want to be in that space, you know, advocating for patients. And like what got me sort of questioning it was like, well, the healthcare system is a little bit damaged and it's struggling, it's kind of broken. Like, how do I still reach people even though I'm a doctor and I can't necessarily, you know, see these people that? And so I felt like policy was a way to reach out to everyone. But so one of the roadblocks too was also that, you know, I was from, you know, first generation immigrant parents, and a lot of, you know, though, like a lot of parents will, especially in underrepresented backgrounds, they understand lawyer, doctor, engineer, but then when you go off to like PhD, they're like, what is that? Is that like, are you gonna go be an art major and like sculpt things? And, you know, you talk about designing experiments, and they're lost on that because it's a little bit unfamiliar. So then, you know, trying to seek out opportunities that are different from the mainstream, that aren't always well understood, was one of those roadblocks. And then as far as entering the workforce now as a PhD student, understanding different career opportunities is also still very challenging if you're like hardcore basic science, because your PI is just like, you know, when I told my PI, hey, I want to do science policy, I don't want to go into the traditional academia route. And he was like, well, that's, I mean, what you want to do is probably you're just running coffee for a senator or something. And I was like, I think we're not necessarily PhD holders running coffee for people, you know. So I kind of had to like seek out, you know, a lot of sources on the internet and opportunities for that. And even opportunities, especially like in Alabama, are very limited to sort of break out and still be competitive compared to other states that have programs that have fellowships. So I think that's also, you know, very difficult to have access to fellowships and to opportunities to learn and like get experience with policy and policy making. So yeah.
I agree with you that at the undergraduate level, the students might not have enough exposure to what a policy career is. So I think that maybe one solution could be to have them start doing career exploration early on, right? So sort of like, so that they are aware that this exists and that it could be an option. Because if the reality is, like, if you think about doing a PhD, sometimes, and that was an issue for me when I was close to finishing, I realized, wait a minute, if I don't get an academic job, what are the skills that I have, right? So, sort of like having that moment of like, okay, but a lot of the jobs that you find out of a PhD can be done without one, right? So it's sort of like, if you would like train the students to have career development early on, maybe that will be a solution, one of the solutions.
I completely agree with that. And as a current undergraduate, that's the experience I've had is that I didn't understand that like science policy was an option for me. And it was kind of intimidating because from my point of view, it looked like it was only available to master's students and PhD students, and undergraduates like, oh, you're not smart enough yet for that. You're not capable enough for that route to get interested in it just yet, kind of thing. So I completely agree with you.
Yeah, and I think you all bring up really great points. And Haley, going to what you just said, that brings me back to when I was an undergrad, and you know, I'm trying to find opportunities for science policy. But even like now that I work in science policy, I still think that there's so many opportunities for people of all education levels. And it doesn't even have to be like DC. It can be like local level. It can be state level. I think that's a lot of the like attention in science policy is like, oh, go to DC, get a fellowship. And that's inhibiting in itself because not everyone can do that. But there's a lot of levels to science policy that it's not just, oh, I'm working in Washington, DC. It's like, oh, I'm engaging in my local government or like my local policy group. And I think that's lost too. And you know, you don't need a PhD, in my opinion, to be able to engage at that level. So I think that's a really great point. And I think really great discussion so far. I'm very, very interested in what you guys have to say.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Erin. And like I also had some informational interviews with people who are working in science policy right now. And one thing that came up is like fellowships are not necessary even to get into a science policy career. So the previous slide wherein it said like PhD, then fellowship, and then a career, at times, like because it's these fellowships are so competitive, it's not necessary that everybody gets in, but everybody is eligible for it.
Yeah, I actually kind of like have that question about, because I'm a fourth year now. I'm going on to my fifth year, and you know, just kind of like wondering, you know, what's the next step? You know, after graduating is not like going to do a postdoc. Do I have to do a postdoc? Because I know what I want to jump into. I know I don't want to necessarily do academia. And then I'm just thinking, you know, do I want to do these fellowships? Are they necessary? It feels like they're necessary, but they're also very competitive. And then it's like, well, does it feel like I'm just not going to have a career or a chance to enter the SciPol workforce without a fellowship? If I can't get one. So kind of feeling the same way.
Yeah, I can speak to that from, you know, somebody who's done a PhD and a postdoc while I try to figure out my next steps. It does seem like at this level, the fellowship is sort of the way to go. I mean, I only know a couple of people that have done it without it. But like you said, it's competitive, but there are also more opportunities. Although I do think that you could probably get a job without it if you have enough experience. So like for me with my fellowship, you know, it's interesting because I did my fellowship with Study for Neuroscience and I don't have a neuroscience background, but because I had done, you know, policy and advocacy, a lot of different volunteering, you know, that sort of went through, but still it was only 6 months. You know, I moved across country for that. I had to network and meet people and, you know, find a job after. So it's somewhat helpful to get your foot in the door, but you still have to, you know, do all the work on the side to actually get a full-time job after. So yeah, happy to talk more offline too.
So a couple of my friends have also had the similar experience that they have had to do the fellowship. I know people that have gotten a job. I actually have a job right now related to science policy, but it is very entry level. So that means that I'm starting from below what like somebody would usually start with a PhD, right? So the fellowship might allow you, sorry about the kids, the fellowship might allow you to enter at a kind of like, not after you do it, not as an entry level, right?
Yeah, I think you still start out pretty much at the bottom. So this is what I've heard, and it's true. Like when you switch fields from science to policy, you are starting from zero and like have to learn how things work depending on where you work. So, you know, working for a university, I understand that side of things, but there's a lot of, you know, understanding how advocacy works, how you work with Hill staff, how you actually do advocacy strategy and all this kind of stuff. So, but yeah, my job, you know, the analyst type of job is kind of the entry level, and that's what I have now, even though I have a PhD. And so I think that in that sense, yeah, people who come into this field, you think like, you know, I'm an expert in my scientific field, but in policy, you're really starting, you know, from the bottom and learning everything again. So which is interesting. I mean, I'm enjoying it. There's a lot to learn, but you are starting from the bottom. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And obviously, like, I've never done a fellowship. I don't have a PhD, so I'm not like an expert in a scientific field. But I think it brings up a good question of, you know, when our science policy training really starts. So, you know, if we did have more opportunities, you know, like obviously there's extracurricular stuff. Like we're all here at the NSPN Symposium, and NSPN is a really great resource for science policy. But you know, like a lot of institutions don't offer like science policy courses. You know, I went to a very small liberal arts school and I was able to take like interdisciplinary classes. So they were more geared towards like science and society, but it still wasn't like science policy. And so, you know, we're hoping to, through our work at SAI, you know, develop trainings or kind of like start the conversation earlier for undergraduate students who really passionate about science, not sure if they want to go for the full PhD, but like would love to apply their science to a policy career. And so I think, you know, it brings up a lot of questions because I think in academia there are different pathways. Like, you know, at my school it was also like PhD or medical school. And so it kind of is like about changing the culture a little bit and to expanding the opportunities and like just general awareness of policy careers.
I think that the idea of a course in which you give them sort of like societal problems and have them think about how they will solve them in policy, that, I mean, I would love to take that even now. But at the undergraduate level, the students are going to have like really cool ideas, probably not narrowed down by like, because one thing with the PhD, obviously the PhD makes you an expert in something. So maybe your point of view is also going to be more narrow than somebody that hasn't done that yet.
Yeah, I just want to mention, since you brought up the Irvine course, so we completed this round, but it will be open again next year, and it's online, free. We do have an application process, but it's open to anyone from anywhere in the world actually to apply, and we've had people from other countries too. So that is one way to do this, and there seems to be more of these things popping up recently with kind of virtual trainings. Yeah, the website I think has been edited right now, would be here. Actually, it looks like Harinder took it down, but yeah, it will be here. And also we have a Twitter, I can share that too. We'll post the course again when it opens on social media too.
And that's a certification course, right? Like you receive a certification in science
Yeah,
policy?
Warima can tell you. Yeah, it's a certificate program.
Yes, it is a certificate program. You get the certificate, and it's very intense, but I loved it because you learn how to do a lot of things in terms of writing, doing a policy pitch and all that. I really enjoyed it. I'm actually thinking of writing something but I did in the course. So yeah, I'm working on something. Maybe another memo, maybe.
For the certificate program, are there scholarships available for it?
It's free.
Oh, that's even better.
All right, does anyone else have anything to add to our identifying problems with the pathways? We kind of got a little bit into the solutions, which, as you can probably guess, is our next conversation topic, but I want to make sure that if you have anything to share that we're able to hear that.
I'm hesitant to say a word like this. It might be that I'm an outlier in this, but it's about getting international students into the science policy workforce. So feel free to write it down or.
Yeah, that's one of the things I'll say, that that's one of the reasons we started this Irvine program, because there are folks that don't have access to, you know, some of the fellowships that require citizenship. But any of the things we talked about are also good in terms of volunteering with NSPN or other places. I can also talk about the Journal of Science Policy and Governance. So that's another way to gain some experience in terms of writing and publishing and editing. So there are things that don't require citizenship, but yeah.
All right, great. So we're gonna move on to our next breakout room discussion topic, which is just, brainstorming solutions. So we already did that a little bit with thinking of, potential undergraduate course or just course in general, where we provide like a societal problem and have students or people try to solve that through science policy. And I really think that would be a really cool idea to have it as like a challenge. So, kind of have people submit their ideas and then, have first place, second place, stuff like that. But yeah, I think there are a lot of solutions to this. And, obviously at SAI, we're trying to build out these solutions to make them accessible for everyone so that we can expand the science policy workforce. So I'm interested to hear if you guys have any ideas, anything to share. Hopefully our conversation has like your wheels turning a little bit.
One idea that I was thinking about that was like really important, that had a huge effect on me in just entering research or considering other career opportunities, was that there at a grad school fair that I went to, there was a booth on like, a post-bac experience at, that was highly research intensive. And that gave me like a window into looking at different careers. So I think like definitely being present at those booths, like getting in contact with, biology departments in different universities and being present just, to like talk to students is one way to kind of, because everyone was talking about like, well, I didn't know what my options were, and kind of having like, a career fair or job fair, they're always present at different levels from like freshman to, junior to senior. That type of outreach, I think, would really be a great resource for students.
What we're doing in Speak right now is we started a new position, like a undergraduate representative position. And so their job is to look at opportunities that are available to undergraduate students in science policy and then get the word out about Speak. It's been kind of easy, like getting students interested in science policy and like what the possibilities are, but keeping them interested in it has been difficult, I guess, because it feels more like a master's or PhD route versus like undergraduates being able to have impact in science policy. There are definitely students out there who are interested in it, but keeping them interested in it has been an issue.
But it's because probably they don't realize that they can, right, do it. So when Adriana, is it your name? Asamani, what is your name? When
Yeah,
you were
it's
mentioning
Adrian or Adriana, yeah.
Adriana, so when you were mentioning before, like I thought about like, what if somebody develops like a post-bac opportunity, but for science policy, and what you take undergraduates that are recently graduates, and before they go to grad school, they get to do something like that, like kind of spend like a year like doing policy work. Or
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. That would be really, really a great idea, actually.
I really like that idea too, and Erin's idea for like a competition.
Yeah, so this is something we're exploring with SAI as well. As Fanuel mentioned, they do have the summer program, which is for undergrads, and the fellowship for grad students. Probably we'll be developing something like this in the future, and probably a summer program, or still thinking through the programming for this, but this is really helpful.
Yeah, I can share a little bit about some of the work I did at Georgetown. So I took a class where it was basically like it was mimicked off of like a science policy firm. And so, we basically had to come up with a policy idea, see it through, and meet with members of Congress to like pitch the idea to hopefully get it into legislation. And so me and a couple of my classmates came up with a idea called SPUD, which is science policy for undergraduate development, which is like kind of a hard acronym to remember. But basically, there are existing programs for undergraduate researchers. So it's the research experiences for undergraduates through the NSF. They host, basically they'll give schools money to hold these workshops in the summer for students. And so they can do it for like biology, chemistry, basically any science that the NSF like funds or they have directorates for, they can do with REU, which is what it's called. So many acronyms, but anyway, so they have these programs. And so our policy topic idea was to basically expand that to be science policy focused. So instead of having, you know, a workshop in the summer for chemistry students, it could be for students that were interested in science policy. And so we got a lot of feedback on that, a ton of support. We tried to get it into the NSF for the Future Act, but we weren't able to because it doesn't necessarily need legislation. Like NSF has the authority to create this program already. And so we're meeting with a few people from NSF, hopefully soon, to go over our proposal. But there are a lot of existing frameworks that science policy can kind of piggyback on that are already in place, that like already have, you know, you have to apply by this date, already have like a framework set up so that we could just add, you know, or science policy. And so that was kind of the work that we did in my last semester, which was really interesting. And I think something that has a lot of potential. But the only, yeah, legislation is definitely tough. We had to like write our own legislation language. I had like no idea how to do that. And so, yeah, it was a good experience. But again, like NSF can do that with their own authority. So they don't necessarily need like legislation to say that. But all in all, what I'm trying to say is that there are already frameworks and things that exist that we can build on to include science policy. I think the only challenge with that is getting people to apply for them. Like as you guys said, professors or your advisors are like, oh, you know, like you're going into science policy, like what is that? Like you're going to end up, you know, giving coffee to senators. But, you know, they're the ones that apply for these grants. So like they're the ones that apply to hold the workshops. And so I think that's definitely a challenge, is trying to reach out to professors, schools, departments, and trying to like offer the benefits of science policy. Because that also, like, I've received like feedback from people. Not everyone's like gung-ho about getting scientists, like all, you know, scientists that don't have a PhD in a policy, because it kind of takes away from the work, like the PhD workforce and academia workforce. And, you know, they don't necessarily want to take students away from that pipeline. So it's definitely very interesting and nuanced, but something to consider.
Seriously, there aren't enough jobs anyway. So sorry. I had to.
Yeah, exactly. There's definitely a problem for trying to get more jobs, or not even trying to get more jobs, just like, you know, what a professor has 10 PhD students, or I don't even know if this is correct, but only one person is going to replace them hypothetically. So what are the other 9 people going to do?
I have a question, kind of like, you know, so that, you know, I kind of see the fellowship program at SAI as kind of a like, you know, solution to potentially how do you, if you don't get the experience you want at your, you know, at your graduate school, at your academic training, you can go do this like a fellowship program, kind of like what SAI is offering. So how can like, you know, SAI kind of, you know, give you not only the skills, but also like a competitive edge on your CV, you know, when you go seeking jobs or seeking opportunities or fellowship programs?
Yeah, so what I can say is, from what I understand from FENUAL, the fellowship is very focused on tool development, whereas the internship is more research. But I think, you know, if you have a project where you want to research a specific policy area and kind of what we're talking about, how do you implement solutions come up with some sort of tool, right? So you can look at some of the things that are online. That is a very useful thing to have on your CV, I think, when you apply for jobs, and like that you developed a project, you create a tool, you know, that sort of thing. Publishing things. Again, these are the things that we were doing in the course too, that teaching people how to, you know, talk about their science to policymakers, doing oral pitches, writing a memo, and all this kind of stuff. So any of these experiences are useful for having on your CV when you apply for fellowships. What I've seen from the applications I've seen, they kind of ask for like your story and like why you're interested in policy, what's your passion, like why did you follow this, you know, what do you want to change in the world, that kind of thing. So you do have to have a kind of a thread about something that you're working on, and I think SAI can provide some of that, you know, having the kind of the projects that you develop here. Yeah, all these things are, I mean, I could talk more about this, but these are all kinds of things that you do day to day. So doing it now while you're still in school is a good way to show that you're interested in, you know, gathering some of these experiences now.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think there are a lot of crowdsourced resources on science policy fellowships and like opportunities that you can find. I think there's like one on Twitter that I've seen. I know NSPN has like a huge list as well. And so like if you're ever, you know, that's like the beauty of networking, is like really people in science policy like uplift each other and really try to like help each other out, because obviously we all know that it can be difficult to like break in and to try to navigate all these different opportunities. I think something that Adriana and I are really excited about is the fact that, you know, we are getting interest in this idea of like expanding the science policy workforce and trying to make it more inclusive and showing that it doesn't necessarily have to be the way it always has been. And so like even you all just attending this workshop today, like going back and having it in, you know, being an advocate for creating more inclusion in the Sci-Pol pipeline and like workforce, I think is really great. And so we just really wanted to obviously thank you guys for being here. And I think, you know, if you're ever interested, like feel free to reach out to both of us and ask for like resources, or like we'd be happy to share the lists that we have. If you're, you know, interested in the SAI fellowship, like please reach out and talk to Adriana and I, and we'd be happy to share more information on that, because really there are no, like there's no one way to, there's no like silver bullet to get into science policy. It's kind of just like whatever works for you. And I think that's what makes the field unique as well. So does anybody have anything else to share for our solutions? I know like we talked a lot about different things. It's hard to think, it's definitely hard to think about like different solutions, because obviously this really is a new topic. And so it takes a long time to like think of ways to kind of change cultures around science policy and stuff like that. But if you have anything else to share, I'd love to hear it. Otherwise, we'll move on with our conclusion. Okay, so let me see where we're at here. Okay, so we're gonna stick around to chat with you guys if you're interested, but here are our contact information. So we have our Twitter handles. I have my email in there as well. I know Adriana would be happy to connect with you guys. So feel free to connect with us. We're gonna stay on for the next 10 minutes because I think this goes for another 10 minutes. So feel free to ask us more specific questions. But again, thank you guys so much for coming. We really enjoyed the discussion today.
Yeah, feel free to connect and email us. I know we've been connecting in the chat as well, but if you're interested in any of the SAI programs as well, again, we're just getting started in developing this, and this is actually, I think, a good a good skill set if you want to help us build programs. That's another way to actually learn policy, is to build something like this.